Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robby. Welcome back to our channel Bookworm Couple. We are a little bit late, sorry about that, but we are going to be talking about the fourth book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan.
It's only 4? I thought it was 5.
This is the fourth. The
Good
last
job.
one is The Blood of Olympus.
I know how to
The
count.
fourth one, the one we're actually going to be talking about today, is The House of Hades, the penultimate book in the
Love
Heroes
that
of
term.
Olympus series.
You taught me what that means.
Did I?
Yeah, I had no idea what that
That's
meant
great
until
because
like
I didn't
a few
know,
months ago.
I didn't know what that meant until a few years ago.
Okay, great.
Great.
You always teach me words.
Always learning new things. This is very exciting.
If I don't know a word, I think you know it.
Okay, I can.
Most of the
I
time,
guess I
I'm
can
like,
see
Robby,
that.
what does this mean?
Sure, fair. How did you feel about this one?
I love this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
This
it's
is my
so
favorite.
funny. I actually finished this a while ago. We kind of got off on our reading schedules a little
Yeah,
bit.
and I was
and
slow as
I was
molasses.
rereading through my notes, and I think this is one of the rare books that we've read for the channel this year where I feel actually pretty strongly more positively about it the farther I've gotten away from it, which is always a great feeling.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, too. To be fair, I kind of had the same feeling because I read this the slowest ever of all time, and not because I wasn't interested in it, just because I wasn't motivated to read, period.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, like, when I finished it yesterday, because it's been stretched out for so long, I was like, yeah, this book kind of rocks.
It does.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about this book that I really, really love. There are a few plot lines in particular that I adore that I
Yeah.
was not expecting to. I don't think anyone would have, because some of them are super random. But overall, I also think this book really, really benefits from the fact that much like, what was it, The Last Battle? Was that the last book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series? I think so.
Great question.
The fifth
titles.
book in the Percy Jackson the Olympian series is the best book in that series, I think, largely because it doesn't follow the normal structure of these books.
Yeah, it's more focused.
Exactly. And I think this book, while it does have, like, half of the book is normally structured, but then the Percy and Annabeth stuff in Tartarus
Just one
is very
storyline.
not.
Yeah.
And I think the book really benefits from that, again.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so was really...
It's just way more focused.
Yeah, it just makes it more focused, and there's just... Yeah, I think it's great to see Riordan. I really hope I'm saying that right. I say his name a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
I
I've
was saying
heard
that
other
right.
people say it other ways, but I forget
Really?
the other
How
pronunciations.
else?
I don't remember,
Oh.
which is why I always say
Please
Riordan.
correct us if we're wrong. I would love to learn.
But I always love to see him branch out from his normal formula, because every time he's done it that I've read,
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're a great writer.
Yeah. So I just really think that that's a strength
Yeah.
in this book, particularly, as well as, like I said, a bunch of other plot lines. Is there anything else you want to say generally before we jump into spoiler territory?
I think the character development, you know me and my characters and my emotional journey, character development in this was beautifully done. I thought it was, and maybe this is a me thing, but it just felt so, and mature isn't the right word, but it definitely was, I could relate a lot more to these characters and what they were going through, and yeah, period. I loved it.
Absolutely. All right, so spoiler warning going forward. If you have not read this book, take a second. We'll be here. Come back and check it out later. But how do you want to structure this? I was thinking we could do everyone, and then at the end we do Percy and Annabeth.
Yeah, sure.
Through Tartarus. Great. I do think that everyone's journey, not in the deepest level of the underworld, was the weaker part of this book, but there were some really great
some,
moments.
Like, gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really great moments.
Emotional beats.
I guess we can go character by character.
Yeah.
I liked in the beginning how Hazel was set up to be a big part of this.
Oh, yeah.
That meant with Hecate or Hecate. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Okay, so in my head, I've always said Hecate, but I think that's entirely wrong.
I've always said Hecate too.
In the
but I've heard
audiobook,
people
he
say
says Hecate.
Hecate,
But he
yeah.
also says Gia instead of Gaia, and I thought it was Gaia.
I think it's Gaia too.
I think it's Gaia. So I'm not sure if that is the correct pronunciation, but Hecate kind of makes more sense.
It does.
But in my head, anytime I've read anything that has
Me too.
her mythologically there,
I've always
it's been
read Hecate. Yeah, I've always
it's
read
a
Hecate.
classic Hermione situation.
Yes. So I liked the way that she was set up from the beginning to be a big part of this.
Correct. And even thinking of the way that it paid off in the end was like, oh, wow. Like, just, I want a spin-off book of Hazel. I think Hazel's such an interesting character.
Yeah. Yeah, well, her and Nico having such an interesting experience with being displaced out of people out of time, I guess I would say.
And with that also being children of the underworld, which definitely gets them looked at in a particular way. I think their journey is a very interesting like juxtaposition. I don't even know that that's the right term, but I think seeing them like kind of battling in general, being out of place, but having each other. And I think every little moment we get with the two of them of like holding their hands or like taking their, like giving them a hug, or it's like makes my heart explode. Absolutely explode.
Yeah, well, because she's the only one who really like even tries.
Well, she's literally like Nico, just like, okay.
Yeah.
She's like, hi, brother. Like, be loving.
Yeah, right? I did love how many times in this book they were just like, Nico's up on the crow's nest alone. And I was
literally,
like, okay.
I just and imagine, also, I listened to the audiobook for probably like 75% of this, and the way he did Nico's voice was like kind of this like cool, like emo kid, and I just am imagining like bangs like on the front the boat, and just like by himself, and then randomly like scaring people because he's like, yeah, that's like whatever, like
yeah. Everyone I feel like almost every character in that above world storyline has a moment where they're like, whoa, Nico's there. Like,
he just
like creeps up on someone.
Yeah.
Which I think is very appropriate, not only because of his personality, but of the powers that he has.
Yeah, for sure. He's a shadow.
I think it's kind of a purposeful running joke.
Yeah, I think he's very much has an identity, a very clear identity.
Yes. I mean, since we're talking about him, and that doesn't mean we have to leave Hazel behind, but since we are talking about Nico, I think he has one of the most famous beats, I guess, in this series. Did you realize that he was gay before it happened?
No,
because there's some pretty heavy foreshadowing going on.
Well, and now I see that. Leading up to it, I did. I didn't really foresee anything relationally with him at all. It never felt like there was an emotional, like attraction coming from Nico in any way until this book, and
with when
him
Annabeth
started talking
thing, I thought that was kind of just like, okay.
It was that was the most like laid out for me when he was like, oh, it's Annabeth, and I was like, oh, it's absolutely not Annabeth. It's like the second that I think Jason mentions like, oh, you think he has a crush on Annabeth, and I was like, no, he does
no, he
not.
doesn't.
I know he doesn't. And it was so that I guess at that point I kind of understood it, but I hadn't like gotten any spoilers
that's good
from the book.
That was like one of the hardest things I think to have kept from you in any series that we've read in this channel, just because we've been reading these books for a long time, and Nico shows up in book 2 or 3.
And I love Nico. I've always had a soft spot for him, and it makes his emo sad boy journey very understandable and relatable, especially like as a teenager. And then also I thought the way that all of that was handled with him and Jason was really beautiful and very kind of realistic of a supportive teenager situation, where it's like you see this misunderstood kid just on his own, and then bringing it back as well to him being from another time in which that was thought upon as an even
part of it that I totally forgot, honestly.
Yeah, and it made it so
heartbreaking,
sad, so heartbreaking, but then beautiful. I feel like the scenes with him and Jason, of Jason being like, bro, dude, be free. Yeah. And him encouraging him to just like be free with it was really stunning. And I love my boy Nico. I think I don't know that this was the first, because I read these when I was probably a little bit older than the target audience, because that's when they were coming out, I think. I don't really remember, but like maybe. This is definitely, I think, the first like book aimed at younger readers that had an openly gay character. Yeah. I think it was handled very well, personally. I remember it from reading it, even though I was a little bit older, because it had impact on me, and I thought how important it is for such a popular series to have an openly gay character. 100%, especially at a young age, too,
exactly.
Have that example.
And I liked the scene where it was all revealed, because it's funny, Jason is like the straight man, literally and figuratively in this season. So right. He's the guy who's like, wow, everyone around me is crazy. I'm just like a normal jock. Dude. Like, I'm a normal dude. And having him come out to Jason, and Jason just being like, oh, cool. Like, like I think that's really important. Like, everything about the scene I really liked. I also liked, and I wrote it in my notes, and because it's been so long, it's been a few weeks since I read this, and I don't remember exactly who said it, but there is a point where someone, I believe it's actually Jason, who says something along the lines of like, who you are isn't a choice, who you love isn't a choice, it's who you are. Yeah. And I was like, good, good job, well done.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah, and so I think it's a very important scene.
I agree.
In this book, it has huge ramifications. There is a Nico series that I have never read. Maybe we'll get to that on this channel eventually.
I love Nico.
Or maybe it's a book. I don't know if it's a full trilogy or just one
Yeah.
book, but I know that there's a book with Nico. I assume it has something to do with the relationship.
I hope he gets some hot, sexy love.
I don't know. But, I mean, this is for kids.
I
Come
know,
on.
right? I'm in my Avatar brain. I'm like, get it, Nico!
Okay, let's calm down. But
no, and I agree
a
with
nice
you. And
smooch would be great.
That's kind of what I thought about it. And maybe we'll get to a point as society where, like, it doesn't need to be even a coming out. There can just be, like, this person is attracted to this and this person is attracted to this. But in the world in which we're in and having that, you know, scene, I thought it was really well done in the way of, like, we don't need to question it. It's just, okay.
Yeah.
Period. And I think the way that was written with Jason was so lovely, and I would hope would make a lot of people feel very accepted and loved, because you are.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it was great. But
I also, Liz in me, if you've watched the channel for a while, you know I'm a romance girly, so I'm like, oh, yes. Give me more romances. Give me more romances. Yeah. We got a lot.
Yeah, we got a lot of romance.
Book.
This series is like, I love how romantic this series has gotten, because it's also very funny and it's very cute, and maybe it's just nostalgia for me, but I'm like, oh my god, look at these adorable kids falling in love. And some of them are getting pretty old now, like they're getting to their late teens.
Okay, Nico's great, period.
Nico is great.
Do we move on to the next love story?
I think
in my mind, which is Leo.
Well, I think we should talk about Frank first, since we
just really want to.
Well, because I really want to talk about Frank, and also because he's with Hazel.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Come on.
I'm personally going for, like, my rated love stories, which I was real excited about Nico, and then next.
Maybe we're not going to get back to Hazel, because we apparently have a lot to say.
Okay.
I have a lot to say about Frank.
You got a lot to say about Frank.
Yeah, I was really excited.
Frank had a glow up.
He sure did, and I really can't overstate how excited I was as soon as we got the first Frank POV chapter. I was just like, thank God. Because I was so annoyed. They did him so dirty in the last book. And he was so great in Son of Neptune. And I also appreciate that Riordan, again, hopefully I'm saying that name correctly, basically acknowledged, he was like, yeah, I really messed, like, Frank was not good in the last one. Because they open up with Frank being like, I was weird for a while because Mars and Ares have been arguing in my head. Yeah. And I went, you own it. The author owns that he dropped the ball, Frank, in the last book. Whether it was on purpose or not, that's fine. Yeah. But yeah, I which I really did appreciate.
Let's give our boy Frank some.
But Frank had so many amazing moments in this book. Yeah. I really didn't care about, like, the nature, the farming god. He was kind of funny trying to get Frank to, like, be a farmer.
Literally completely forgot about that.
Somewhat amusing. But Frank, like, getting the blessing of Ares and killing all those things while hyper-violent, like, and have, like, a super big glow-up and being, like, really buff now.
I like that it led to, like, a physical glow-up. Of, like, Frank is no longer a teen, he's a man.
Yes, exactly. And also, I mean...
and Hazel's like, hey...
Yeah, they did a lot of heavy foreshadowing. I also thought it was really funny that Frank's like, I'm super buff now. Oh, man, is Hazel still gonna like me? It's like...
Meanwhile, Hazel's like... Yeah. I love this blow up for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And me.
Yeah. And I also really liked the very heavy foreshadowing, just kind of sprinkled throughout the book, of they have the scepter. Nico is, the undead guy, but they get this scepter to, bring the army, the undead army. Classic. Very Lord of the Rings. Oh, yeah. And Jason is having an identity crisis the whole time. We can talk about Jason's journey later. It was very obvious to me from the beginning that, like, Frank is obviously going to be the one who has to control these
I didn't even think that, but I loved the moment.
Well, they also had been saying for a while that, like, the sons of Ares can command the legions of any army that lost in history, which is dark. But, very dark. Him taking control of the legions at the very end when they're in the House of Hades or getting there was so cool. That was phenomenal. One of the coolest moments.
It was another moment where I think, because we had his POV, because we were in his head, it was a very human moment of him being like, okay, like, I don't believe in myself. I haven't believed in myself, XYZ. And then all of a sudden he's in this position where he's like, well, I just have to do it. And I think that's the realest thing in a reaction, like, in some instance in which you're fearful or you don't believe in yourself, when you're thrust into a moment where you're like, oh, I'm the only one who can take action here. I'm just going to do it. And then to watch that just, like, explode with success was so satisfying. And just really great. And I think so much of these books, and I think any young adult book is very much, there's so many lessons thrown within, but that is such a great specific moment because it wasn't of like all of a sudden Frank was like, I can totally do this. It was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And then, you do it. And I think that's so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think there's something to be said, and this is probably me reading into it a little bit too much, but like Frank is not a stereotypically masculine character. He struggles with that aspect of himself because he is the son of like the hyper masculine god.
Yeah.
War is seen as a male's whatever. And
but his mom was the warrior,
and his mom was the warrior, and that's for but Ares, just the way, and Mars, the way they have been portrayed in this book, are just masculine. Like the worst dudes,
like
toxic masculinity to a T. And Frank is the antithesis of that. So it's been so interesting watching his. Because his storyline is very much about building your own confidence. And in another character, it could be bad because it could be seen as like, all of his confidence building stuff has basically been around like killing and like leading or like murdering and leading armies and stuff. It could be stereotypically toxic masculinity, but it's not because of the character. Point. And I think that's a very finely threaded needle that is very good and just makes me enjoy Frank very, very much. I also think he's very funny.
Yeah, he's a cutie character.
Yeah, he's a very cute character. He gets his fireproof bag from Leo.
I also don't know that
we knew this was coming.
I also don't know that we've ever described Hazel specifically physically, but in my head, she's tiny.
Yes, me too.
And so, like, having this massive boyfriend,
big, buff dude.
And then there's this little nugget, I love.
I love.
But I also
see her
love,
as well.
and here we go back to Hazel, in that, and maybe this is me identifying because I am also a small person who wants to be a powerful woman. My imagery of Hazel, especially in the end, where she's just the power piece, is so inspiring because I'm just imagining this short little girl just taking charge, and I think that makes her power even more impactful.
Yes, she has some great moments. Everything at the end I liked quite a bit. I think the magic duel could have been a little bit cooler, but I did really like
with the mist and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I
got a little lost. It was a really big.
It was just a really big setup, and I was like, oh, this is a functionally cool thing, but.
I know. I was even thinking of just like it's like right in the middle of the beginning when they get to the house.
That was my thing.
And she's like, poof, rocks.
Yes.
Poof, rocks.
Yes.
I'm like, dang, girl.
Yeah.
Get it.
my thing was like, it felt like, because she was set up to be a big part of this, and necessarily we haven't even started talking about Percy and Annabeth yet, and it's already been 20 minutes. Her storyline felt a little bit flat because all the setup kind of just ended, and then there was a lot bigger stakes stuff happening.
Fair, yeah.
To me, but she did have some very cool moments. The whole storyline where her and Jason go off, I was like, I don't really care. But seeing her use the mist then was pretty cool. And I will say one random thing that I actually really liked. They didn't really harp on it very much, but Hazel's like, I don't really trust Jason because I don't really know what his deal is. And I actually really liked that. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's actually a very interesting perspective that I never really thought about. And they didn't really go into it very much, but I thought it was an interesting character moment for her.
I think she's such an interesting character because I think in that storyline, you see so much of her being the caretaker. Like, I think that's very much kind of who she is. She's this powerful person, but then she also kind of has this motherly presence about her, I think, with this group that is so much the heart of it and the glue that kind of keeps them together. And interesting to watch her make that connection with Jason and then the both of them to have this mutual trust and respect for each other really kind of settled into her character for me.
Okay, we got to start moving because we're going to talk about...
Let's talk about Leo.
Do you want to talk about Leo or do you want to talk Jason and Piper first?
Okay, Jason and Piper.
Let's do Jason and Piper because they're pretty easy. Unfortunately, Piper really didn't do anything for me in this book.
No, it's a bummer.
She raised Festus with the power of love, which I was like, okay.
Don't be a sass.
And that's it, which I feel bad for. And Piper was fine in this book. It's just everyone else had some really incredible moment. It wasn't really her book. Jason... For the fact that, like, I don't... Jason, like, deciding to be who he is a large character moment for him. It's not as flashy as a lot of what the other characters go through, but it's probably the biggest character moment for him in the series.
He, in this
He's very involved in this book, though.
Well, that's what I mean. That's kind of what I was thinking. Is similarly, like I said about Hazel, is his journey in this book is very much of the support and kind of the cheerleader, obviously with Nico, but then with the rest of the group too, and like him watching Hazel be, you know, like, dude, you can do it, you're powerful. That's very much him. But then it also kind of winds into him, you know, accepting himself and accepting that he's changing. And I think that, again, is another beautiful example for young people of, like, it's super cool to change. Yeah, super all right. Like, you don't have to be Roman and you can be Greek. And, like, obviously it's very black and white. But it's more of, like, it's okay if you no longer identify with who you used to be. You can be something new. And that's actually more powerful to step into than attempting to make yourself fit into a box that you feel like you need to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that really covers anything I would have said too. Yeah. So I think that Jason served the purpose that he was supposed to in this book. It wasn't flashy, but I think it was still vital.
No, yeah, I agree. I think I liked the character a lot, but it wasn't necessarily big, but I think integral to the story.
Exactly.
Same with Piper too.
Piper too, yes.
I like Piper. I want more about Piper.
I hope that we get more Piper in the next book. But Leo, oh man, Leo's great. Talk about romance, baby. I will say one thing about this book.
The second I figured out his Calypso, I was like, oh my god, he's gonna get a love story. I'm so excited.
Of course he is, yeah. I was like, of course. I literally wrote in my notes, of course Leo's gonna go back because he's a real man and a romantic. Like, yeah, of course he is.
It was like, I also, the young Liz in me who just like wanted a man to see her and to like give her attention and like show her that she was worthy and that she was being chosen. I was like, oh my god, Calypso, you found him. It's Leo. He's him. The one. He's the one.
He's
and you,
the one. Yeah, he's the one who deserves your love, not any of those other guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Not even Percy.
Not even Percy. No.
That's okay, Percy didn't. But that was honestly my favorite section of the story.
Him on the island?
100%.
It's really good. It's a very good, I think it's only 1 or 2 chapters, but it's very, very good.
Well, but similarly to a lot of the other male characters in this book, Frank specifically and Jason, this was very much Leo kind of coming into his own and accepting himself for the powers that he has and like what he has to give to the group and what he has to give in general and where he shines. And it was fun to see it played out in a more subtle way, because there's even descriptions of like, oh, he looks rugged in his clothes and like whatever.
He tried to give Leo a glow up in the middle
but
of
it was
the
like
book.
It was like a real glow up.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. You know, it's not like, all of a sudden you got big muscles. It was like, he's just kind of looking like a man now.
Looks like a man.
Yeah, he's just looking comfortable in his body and like confident in himself. And to have those little tidbits, and then also to have the little tidbits of Calypso being like, she looked at me a little bit longer that day. And I'm like, yeah, she did.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did.
And their relationship, I thought, was really well written. Like, you know, we get to her and she's immediately this like calloused woman who's been left again and again and again, has never been chosen. And
you know Leo's gonna choose her. Come on, baby.
Our horny boy. But to kind of start out with that and to have this almost enemies to lovers situation, but in a way that was a little bit subtle, where she's like, randomly she shows up wearing jeans, and then she starts to bring him food, and then she starts to help him with his things, and then Leo being the brilliant, wonderful human that he is, starts to see her for the little things and give her credit for the little things of like, oh, this flame resistant
the cloth.
Flame resistant cloth. Can you make more of that? And your stew is so great. Like, brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Good. Can you tell I'm obsessed with it?
It was really, really good. I like that a lot. I did also, and this is super random, I was, I'm not always a fan of all of the little side quests that happen in these books. And when Leo started his early on in the book, I was just like, oh, man, I'm really not into this. But it won me. Those weird, like, quest? Monkey... No, I'm talking about a different one. The one really early in the book. With, like, the monkey dwarf things.
Oh,
I was just, like... In the beginning, I was just like, oh, okay. Let's just get through this. Like, at least I like Leo.
Yeah.
And then, by the end, I was like, honestly, you know what?
Go.
I'm sold. This is so dumb. Like, this... There are a few moments in this book, also, that are, like, peak Percy Jackson and the Olympians, like 5-year-old humor that I was just down
like
for.
Like the farting weasel or whatever.
Yes, the farting weasel and the monkey dwarfs like shooting themselves out of a ballista. I was like, great. Yeah, man. Give it. Sure.
Well, and also that pays off because eventually they make their way to Camp
Yes,
Half-Blood and like
yes, exactly.
screw with the
which
romance,
was really,
which
which
is
I was
very
like,
funny.
yes, that's very, very funny. I also loved that, and this is not related to Leo, but speaking of, since I guess it just organically came up, the dream where we see Grover and Rachel Dare, like a Grover and Rachel Dare cameo with Octavian. You're like, obviously Octavian is gonna,
Be a jerk.
attack Camp Half-Blood, but it was cool to see both of those characters pop up again. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
Anywho, Leo deserves all the love.
Leo's great, and the Calypso chapters are some of the best.
Cannot wait.
I also love that Hazel immediately, like Frank was talking to, I think it's Frank talking to Hazel, and Hazel goes,
like,
he found someone.
He met someone.
Yeah, he met someone. And Frank's like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, come on.
Boys in love.
Yeah, boy is in love.
Come on. He had a love glow up.
Which I thought was so funny.
Yeah, no, very good. Hazel, once again, understanding the family, like, very much. I think, I can't wait to see how that pays off in the next book.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, it's time. We will talk about the other major half of this book, Percy and Annabeth and Tartarus.
Yeah.
This was good. It was the driving force of this book.
Yeah, well, you know what was interesting? I'm kind of just realizing this now. We talked about our kind of dislike of the normal, like, boop, 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 silly little side quest, silly little humor. It's hard to focus. But it was very much of like, our friends are still kind of there, but like Percy and Annabeth were mature. We're just doing one quest.
Yeah, we're doing one big quest.
One intense quest.
Yes. I will say overall, just to start it off, I really enjoyed the amount of work Riordan did to make Tartarus seem menacing and also like a living being, which was gross.
Veins
and
parts.
really, and really worked.
I agree.
He
it was
did
terrifying.
a lot of heavy lifting to make that come across. Like he was mentioning it in like every scene, and it worked. The atmosphere I thought was very, very good and harrowing, especially when they first got there and were like, "How are we gonna?"
Let's just ingest flames.
Yeah, let's ingest flames. That's so metal. Like,
really.
And I really liked, even just from the very beginning, like them falling into this super inhospitable place and the River of Lamentation, and of course Annabeth is like the core that carries Percy.
Yeah, of course.
Even though we see Percy as like she's our
Hermione.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
She's the books.
She's the books.
And the brains, honestly.
She's the heart.
Yeah. Percy's
the brawn and just the ADHD
yeah.
lover boy. But this book, this section, I don't want to jump to it, but I'm just going to, I've been wanting to talk about it since we started this video, has by far, in my opinion, the best storyline in this book, which is Bob. Oh man, that storyline is so good. It's also wild because it's centered around a character that you would not have known existed unless you read the Demigod Files or the Demigod Diaries. I forget which one. He's from a short story that, like, if you had read all of
short story.
Yes, we first.
Well, I mean, I remember the character, but I don't remember where I read him.
Yeah, he wasn't in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. He was in, I think, one of the collections of short stories that we read.
Yeah.
Because we only read one of them. But I was just like, that's first off, when they mentioned him, I was like, oh wow, wild callback. Yeah. And then he popped up and I went, insane to have this character show up.
Yeah.
And then his plot line is the best in the book.
No, it was so well, again, I think we're getting that same kind of lesson of you don't have to be your past. Like, you don't have to be identified with who your family is, what you've done. Like, you can change, you can be different, you can make the choice. And I thought that was so beautifully done in this extreme, obviously, characterization, but then also brings it back to our boy Nico and how Nico was the one who visited him and reminded him that Percy is so wonderful and like, oh God.
Oh, I remember what I wanted to say about Nico. The bit that like ripped my heart out was either Jason or Nico saying like, I saw this guy who was like a hero. Who was like the heroes that like I saw in like Mythomagic, and I went, oh my God.
Break my heart, little teen.
And then he let my sister die. I was just like, this, God, stop. Dark. No, please.
Dark, deep.
Yeah, really, really.
Emo.
Oof.
Loved it, though.
Loved it.
Let's be real.
Sorry, that was a really, but I've been trying to remember what that was for about 20 minutes now. Anyway, we can talk about Bob at the end, but Percy and Annabeth. Percibeth. Yeah?
I just came up with that now.
Sure, whatever. There's probably a real...
I know, there's probably in a brief.
One out there. Who cares? I loved both of their journeys in this. And I also loved the number of times they kind of like... Because they switched between POVs, which I was really grateful for, that wasn't just one of them.
Yeah.
The number of times that, like, they each were like, wow, they're being so strong, I gotta pretend to keep it together for them. And they were both doing that kind of like the whole time. And I also really enjoyed... We haven't seen that too much from Percy. Being like, I'm losing it. Like,
Yeah.
I am so scared. I have no idea how we're going to get out of this. Like, Percy has been scared before, obviously, but it's usually a lot of like, well, I'm just going to throw myself at it. And it'll probably work
happen,
out.
yeah.
And this one, and also probably reflecting the fact that they are both getting older.
Yeah.
Is him being like, I have no idea. Like, I'm so scared, but I have to not show Annabeth because I don't want to make things worse.
I feel like that is such a real testament to like a real relationship.
Oh yeah.
You know, because I mean the times we've talked about being like, oh my god, when you're sad, can't stand it, can't handle it. And so there are moments in which, you know, if there are hard moments, so often you're trying to be like, I got this for this person.
Yeah.
Like I
don't want to worry this person. I want to make sure that they're okay. I think that their emotional arcs make sense. They're in this dark place. Were, I think, throughout the whole thing, very, very well done and built upon very well. They ran into they ran into like monsters from their past that they were able to overcome. And then I really liked the spirits with the Arai, A-R-A-I. I don't know how you pronounce them.
I think you say Arai.
Yeah. I really liked that part because it focused on something that's not really focused on a lot in like fantasy books in general, but especially ones for kids where it's like, look at how many people you've killed.
Yes.
They were really terrifying.
Yeah.
And like the fact that like Annabeth, like they were blinded and they couldn't that entire scene was harrowing and I thought extremely heartbreaking and extremely well done. And even though they didn't really harp on it very much, and I think at one point Percy literally says, I don't feel guilty, which is valid. There are monsters that want to murder him or eat his brain or whatever.
Well, but I think Annabeth has kind of an opposite reaction of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There was one point, and I can't remember the exact scene, but she's like, wow, am I a monster? Like, but then because she convinces herself, she's like, no, that was self-defense. And then you kind of hear her have this like, does that change it?
Yeah.
Kind of a moment, which is deep and I think a good thing to bring light to.
Yeah. Yeah. And their stops, I mean, I will say the weakest part, I think, of the entire Tartarus plot was the very beginning where they come in and then they're like, oh, we can see these, I forget what they're called, Pimples? Whatever Kelly was. Which I was so glad that Riordan wrote down where we saw her before, because I was like, I recognize the name, but I don't remember why. Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, the like weird vampire cheerleader things.
Yeah, I love them.
And I was just like, oh great, you found someone to just like follow to the doors of death. Okay, that's a bit much, but. Other than that, I really liked basically every stop on their journey. When they met the good giant that Bob kept leading them to, he was cutie.
And because he's always got to fight the guy every day.
The big giant dragon thing.
The draken.
Yeah, not an actual dragon. Draken, I think.
Draken, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
He was a sweet story too, and similar to we're kind of having the same reminder as the Bob storyline, where it's like, yeah, I was punished because of this past thing, and I've been doing this forever more now. And you know, you see kind of Annabeth being like, but what if you don't have to do that? You know, of like, you don't have to punish yourself forever.
Yeah. No.
Well, and he also shows up at the end.
Of course he does.
Kicks some butt.
Which I was like, we knew that was gonna happen.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, really?
I hoped.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just kind of assumed. I was like, there's no way he's gonna, like, after all this work has been done, he's not gonna show up again. Yeah, I mean, and his storyline works very well with Bob, especially because they're both, you know, the adults essentially in this scene, and both of them are dealing with the crisis of identity and being like, well, can I move on from my past? Can I choose to be someone else tomorrow? Can I grow? And it works really well seeing that through the lens of Percy and Annabeth, who are children, who are coming into adulthood for the first time and, you know, struggling with all of the things that entails, including finding your own identity. But watching two older people struggle with their own identity at the same time, I thought was just really well done.
I agree with you.
And not without, you know, its morally gray moments. Like Percy encouraging Bob / Iapetus to like murder his brother in one of those gross pimple things was dark. And Percy, like, and I think Annabeth, both morally were not thrilled with it, because it's a bit weird. Like it was really not, like, it was a dark moment in that storyline, just getting him to unknowingly kill his own brother, even if his brother was a villain. There's a lot of complexity to it that I didn't really expect, but really, really appreciated.
Yeah, same.
And I do also just want to shout out again the some of the atmospheric stuff that Riordan did, as well as like primordial gods, like Nyx just popping up. Nyx's description was so cool, and it was, I don't want to say a letdown, because on like how they got past her by just being like, we are, you're not on the tourist board thing, and I went, okay, here's the thing. Nyx's description was really cool. And, like, her showing up and being the embodiment of, like, night and the void. Really unbelievable.
Very cool.
But them getting around her or getting past her in such a dumb way is, like, peak comedic Percy Jackson and the Olympians bit.
No,
and I went,
the
honestly, like, here's the thing. Yeah, it would have been cool if they fought Nyx or whatever was going to happen. But this is probably kind of better. Like, it was really funny to me how stupid that was. I was like, honestly, this is peak stuff. If you don't like this, you shouldn't read these books.
That's fair.
And I really like that. And then when Tartarus showed up as
horrifying,
primordial god, like actual physical form, was terrifying.
Yeah.
Along with all the heartbreaking stuff of Bob staying behind. Bob, who has the most heartbreaking lines in this entire book. My personal favorites are, I liked being Bob. That kind of broke my heart a little bit.
So sad.
Say hi to the sky and stars for me, or something like that.
Depressing, yes.
And and then the last line in the book just, I think, made me cry a little bit.
No, it was because it's Percy
Bob
saying
says hi.
Bob says hi.
It is just heartbreaking.
I couldn't handle it. I was like, and it's literally the last line. So I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
It stabbed me in the heart.
Yeah, this is a very, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Bob is weirdly kind of the emotional crux of this book, because he's not a POV character, and he's not a child. He's not one of the main characters at all. He never has been. And who knows if he's going to come back in the next book or not. But just an unbelievably... It's interesting that was the choice to make him such a big part of the book, and I mean, I think the heart of it, because it's a very mature storyline. And that makes sense, because, we're more mature. This series is growing up with its readers, and the themes are more mature, including romance, but also including some of the darker things and the more challenging things about growing up and being an adult. And up until this point, a lot of it's been focused on, like, as most YA and middle grade books are, like, the transition from young adulthood to adulthood. And this is very solidly just kind of like an adult problem. Like, it's framed for an adult by an adult in a way of just like, can you change? And sometimes...
Spoiler alert, you can.
You can, but also sometimes it takes sacrifice, and it takes things not going very well, and even if you do, maybe things won't go the way that you think they will. Maybe you will not get your happy ending, but at least you'll know that you changed. And that's a very mature theme to have in a book that's ostensibly for middle grade readers.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's heartbreaking. And so I loved it. Yeah, Bob Says Hi is an iconic last line. Unbelievable, honestly. Yeah, really good. Any other shout outs you want to make? That's really the most of it. Are you crying?
No.
Okay.
I just do. I'm snotty.
I do want to shout out one other character, Coach Hedge. Always gotta love Coach Hedge. Coach Hedge was sidelined for all of
Frank's
this book.
Little, like...
Yes. Well, my favorite thing was Fine, I'll tell you. And I was like, oh man, that rocks.
Yeah, very cute.
So just a shout out. Really loved Coach Hedge in this. I wish he had been in it more, but the payoff.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I didn't necessarily remember that he had, like, that he was married and that he got his new wife pregnant, but based on, like, what everything was happening around it, I was like, oh, she's probably pregnant.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was just like, so it was't really a surprise, but I liked how it was handled, and I just thought that was a really funny thing that I wanted to shout out. Yes. But yeah, so that's all I got. Anything else from you?
No.
All right, so what do you want to rate this out of? What should we rate this out of? I haven't thought about this yet.
Giants?
No, Giants seems pretty standard.
House of
Can't be like
Hades.
Tartaruses.
Yeah.
Doors of Death. I can just say, we can rate it at how many doors
There you
of
go,
death.
Doors of Death.
Doors
Okay.
of Death. So I'll do some sort of doorway. How many
You go
doors?
first.
Okay. I think I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 when I finished it, but I'm gonna change it to a 5.
Yeah.
I really liked this. In hindsight, there are some of the strongest plot lines that I've read of
Yes.
Riordan's in this book by far. It's not perfect. There are parts that I thought could have been trimmed down, and there are some chapters that I felt a little bit forced, but I think the strengths of this book are just the absolute, like, match the last battle, match the tops of what this universe has seen. So, yeah, that's going to be a 5 out of 5 Doors of Death for me.
I would do 5 out of 5 Doors of Death as well. This was my most enjoyed, maybe even more so than the last Percy Jackson
you think
book
so?
of the Riordanverse, I think. Because, I mean, you know me. I'm an emotions girl. I'm a relationship girl. And this had so much of it. And I think the subjects that we touched on in this book were just so deep and taught me a lot, which just then I feel like means that I hope so many people took so many great things from this book. I enjoyed it. Mind you, it took me a very long time to read, not because I didn't enjoy the book, but just because of life. But this would be an easy 5 for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, let us know what you think down in the comments below. We'd love to chat about it. Is this your favorite Percy Jackson book, or is this your favorite book in the Heroes of Olympus, or is this one of your least favorite ones, and why? Let us know. Let us know if there's any bits that you really love that we didn't talk about. But otherwise, like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and thank you all so much for watching, and
We'll see you on our next adventure.